On Friday, the South African Cities Network released its State of Cities Report 2021. It shows that the country's population is expected to grow by between 19 and 24 million. This is by 2050. Many of whom will live in cities or towns. Well, to talk more about the report, we're joined by Nosipho, Hlatshwayo, an executive manager of programs at the South African Cities Network. Nosipho, good evening and thanks for your time. I guess when one looks at the findings of the latest report, it's clear that the burden of growing cities and making sure that they're future-proof, whether it's because of the population, they're now ever-increasing issues of the climate that we have to consider, that burden and responsibility alone is simply too much for government to bear.
That's very true, Kathy. I mean, as we see the growth in the cities in terms of numbers, we are also experiencing the pressures that these cities face. But at the same time, the pressures that they are faced with, there's an expectation that they deal with these things alone, which is a misconception. So it then begs the question of saying, how do we make sure that as more people move into cities, we find alternative ways of making sure that the new entrants into the city are also accommodated, and we don't only rely on the resources that cities and government have to deal with these challenges. But I must also say, Kathy, that most of the cities have maintained their delivery in terms of the provision of water, sanitation, electricity, and waste collection. But the continued growth, which we are expecting to see over time, will definitely put pressures on cities.
This growth also means that the way in which we develop infrastructure must take into account for the kind of population numbers we'll be dealing with in future. And if where we are is anything to go by, I mean, a city like the city of Johannesburg is very popular. A province like Gauteng, despite the fact that it has so many metropolitan municipalities, is still unable to deliver services efficiently due to the rapid urbanization.
It's very true. I mean, it's not only in Joburg. What we're seeing in other cities as well. I mean, you take the case of eThekwini municipality with the recent floods. So yes, we might say that these are acts of God, but part of the disaster or the destruction that we're seeing in eThekwini largely has to do with the number of people that are in the city and the ability of the infrastructure that has been provided to cope with the increasing population numbers. So in eThekwini, for example, it's issues around stormwater drainage, where people are located, whether the city does have adequate, suitable land to house people. So as much as we can separate these two things, which is climate change, we do need to look into infrastructure and how we plan for growth to make sure that people in the cities are not exposed to the disasters that we've seen happening. But that also is going to require money to deliver on it, because infrastructure development is not cheap. It requires millions and billions of rand for cities to roll out this infrastructure. But at the same time, with the decline in the economy and a number of people who are losing their jobs, that then puts the city at risk, because their ability to do as much as they want to do is also constrained by the fiscus, which calls for cities to look for alternative ways of doing things, which is why this report is emphasizing the need for partnerships and for all of society to be active in dealing with the development issues in cities.
Nosipho, let's wrap it up on this note, looking at what you found in as far as air pollution, water pollution, littering and land degradation is concerned, because again, that's a big conversation, especially when it comes to the protection of the environment.
So matters of air pollution and land degradation and the likes, those are not just things that the city needs to deal with it on its own. We are seeing in cities where you find that there's a good collaboration between the city and private sector and not-for-profit sector, some very innovative ways of dealing with issues of climate change or issues of sustainability. But at the heart of it, it also requires active citizenry to take responsibility and for everyone to understand what their role is. So much as we call for cooperative governance and for government to be to pull their socks together and pull all the resources together to deal with these issues that you have mentioned, there is a responsibility on the citizenry as well to play their part to make sure that some of these challenges are addressed.
Nosipho Hlatshwayo of the South African Cities Network.